banking bill deals with a small part of this, but not what needs to be done. We need a broad, comprehensive bill.
Can I just say something on that?
Go ahead.
I'm telling you right now, if somebody tries in the Senate to do just a banking bill, they're going to make all the wealth and the money that is going after this already is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But what could become a even bigger industry, to just do it so some people can get rich and not do something about the people who are languishing with criminal convictions, not do something on restorative justice, not do something to make sure that the business opportunities are created are fairly given a fair playing field, where right now in many states, someone who has a criminal conviction for selling marijuana can't get a license now. I don't know about other members of the Senate, but I will lay myself down to do everything I can to stop an easy banking bill that's going to allow all these corporations to make a lot more money off of this, as opposed to focusing on the restorative justice aspects.
And we're back. Welcome back, folks, to the 5 o'clock segment of The Green Rush with Jimmy Young, our leader, and his trusty sidekick, me, David Rabinovitz. Take it away, Jimmy.
Thank you, David. Very good. And just keep in mind, July 30th is your show. All right. I'm just letting it out there, putting it out there. All right. Welcome back to the Green Rush Live is the name of the show, because we are the only live talk show about cannabis business that we can find in the world. Please enlighten me if I'm wrong. Okay. Our chat room is open, and we've got a great panel coming in here at 5 o'clock to give some feedback about the new federal legalization bill that was filed by the U.S. Senate on Wednesday. Joining us are Tom Nolasco. He's the Director of Legal and Strategic Initiatives for the National Association of Cannabis Businesses, we call NACB. So, Tom, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Jimmy. Good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about what you do as the Director of Legal and Strategic Initiatives.
Sure. I essentially act as general counsel, but I'm also spearheading what we do. Is we're an SRO. We create best practices, national standards for the industry, and I spearhead the development of that along with our other legal and strategic initiatives.
There you go. And also from the NACB is Mark Gorman, Executive VP and COO. And being an old sports guy, Mark, I have to ask you if you're any relation to the late, great Lou Gorman, who was a longtime general manager of the Red Sox.
I wish I could say yes.
Sorry, he was a great guy, and he was a guest on my show 25 years ago. That being said, tell us about what the Executive VP and COO does at the National Association of Cannabis Business. Go ahead.
Well, essentially, I work with Tom and Gina, our CEO, and the rest of the staff to mobilize our resources behind legislative efforts. If we've developed a new standard or a new social equity wrinkle to our social equity program, we're trying to bring that to the attention of state legislators and others when it's appropriate on Capitol Hill, and so that's what keeps us busy.
Absolutely does. Any type of association, of course, there's nothing going on in the cannabis universe these days. Holy mackerel. Someone who's very familiar with that is Stephen Mandile, who's also with us. He's also the co-host of a joint venture with Ann Brum, one of our affiliate programs on the Pro Cannabis Media Network. So, Stephen, thank you so much for everything you do for Pro Cannabis Media.
Thank you, Jimmy. Always a pleasure. Likewise, appreciate everything you do for the cannabis industry and everyone here in Massachusetts and across the globe.
What did you say?
Across the globe.
Oh, good. I thought there was, there's another reference to the Globe. I wasn't sure we were talking about the local newspaper or not. That being said, Stephen is also a veteran and someone who has a great story, but we're not going to go there. He's also a selectman in a local town called Uxbridge, Massachusetts. And Stephen, I do want to talk with you first, because I want to get your reaction to the federal bill that was filed on Wednesday. And I know part of that bill has to address the issue of getting cannabis access to veterans.
Correct. Yeah, so that's something really exciting, something that I've been advocating for. Been down to DC the past 3 years, meeting with senators and representatives to get them to push for access through the VA. You know, we have so many injured men and women that served. I was one of them, and we come home and with injuries, and we get massive amounts of pharmaceuticals, you know, that we then, you know, get mad that they're not getting off of because they end up, you know, overdose deaths and addiction problems, but like no other offerings. You know, you go off script and trying cannabis, you're completely on your own. And it's more than just a health decision. It becomes a financial decision. So anytime, you know, it's brought up at the federal level for legalization, it's the utmost importance that there's language in there to allow that to happen at the VA. I feel like we're so far behind. We have our neighbors in the north in Canada, where their VA not only you know, fills out the paperwork for them to get access, but they also reimburse veterans for up to an eighth to 10 grams a day. So it'd be great to see that's something similar down here being given to our veterans.
Mark, when you hear Stephen, a veteran, talking about that, you know that they filed this big federal bill in DC this week. What was your reaction to some of the things that you've seen in that bill?
Well, I think the bill is pretty much as advertised for some time now by Majority Leader Schumer, and in the sense that it's ambitious, and it is meant to be a discussion draft, which is exactly what they've called it. They're inviting comments and criticisms and proposed modifications to not just to other fellow members of the Senate, but also to groups like ours and any people like you. So it's open for discussion and comment. I think passing it the way it is would be a real tall order, but with the right kinds of compromises, it might find some extra votes.
It certainly sparks conversation amongst politicians, for sure, advocates, and even those inside the industry about some of the issues that they bring up. Tom, I do want to ask you, I'm guessing because it says legal counsel, that must mean you are an attorney. So, and I don't hold that against you, by the way, please. Okay. I don't at all. I have an older brother who's a retired attorney. That being said, when you negotiate a deal, right? We all recognize enough to know that leverage is really important in negotiating a deal. Am I accurate so far?
Of course.
Okay. So where is the polling, is the information, are the facts, is the science there to really, does it create a public opinion strong enough to build leverage to see any of these federal opportunities pass? What do you think? Is it a perfect storm? Are we ready for this as a country?
Yeah, it's funny that you're asking me this. In some of our other panels, where Mark and I have appeared jointly, Mark's more of the, and this is funny because he's the insider lobbyist. He's being a little bit modest when you ask for his background, but he's a longtime lobbyist for Discus, for the alcohol and distilled spirits industry. So he's more knowledge and experience with that than I do. But he's more of the optimist, and I'm the pessimist. I talk about this running bet I've had it's now going on 3.5, 4 years, where with my colleagues, they all said it's happening soon. And I said, you're not getting federal legalization within 5 years. And I'm almost there on a lot of my bets. So I'm more of the pessimist. When you're talking about, to get back to your question with leverage, it's an interesting question because the leverage has been there for a while as far as public opinion polls go, right? We all know that across everything, and that's shown out through the data. So the opinion polls are there, which has caused changes in a lot of politicians, all the way up to our Vice President, Kamala Harris, who is an Attorney General who is staunchly against it. And I guarantee if the public opinion polls weren't that way, she wouldn't be on board with things like the MORE Act. So that leverage and that tailwind is there. When Mark was talking about this is an ambitious bill, it absolutely is. just the length of it, and it's a draft bill, 163 pages versus 87 pages for the MORE Act. There's a lot in here. There's a lot to dissect. And that's intentional. It's strategic leverage, right, on the part of Schumer, because what he's essentially saying is, here it is. I know I probably don't have 60 votes. I probably don't even have enough for my caucus right now, but here it is. Let's work through this, and we'll see what we have at the end of the day, maybe a year from now, and we can get something passed that actually takes the step of descheduling. So that's the strategic purpose, I think, behind this, and that's why it's coming out now. And Schumer knows he's got a lot of headwinds, including, the White House, who isn't exactly embracing, this form of legalization. But it's out there now, and that's why we're here on shows like this discussing this.
Mark, as the COO of NACB, is the association you're affiliated with going to dissect and analyze this document and then come out with your opinions of it?
Yeah, we definitely will. We've already started doing that. I think we want to also open the doors to our members who have views about this and really collect good thoughts from anywhere we can. I mean, there's been plenty of commentary already on in the public from about tax, the tax rates, and it's pretty stiff. I mean, going up to 25%. I mean, there's some states that already have a 21% or more tax rate. I mean, that's pretty soon you're getting to half the price of the product if that's the route they're going to go. And I don't think that's going to be acceptable to the public. There are some great things in here, like opening up research with the right kinds of cannabis availability. Interesting things about their social equity program, which I don't quite understand all of it, how it all fits together and how it would fit together with what the states are doing, but that's got to be worked through. Lots of stuff. It's going to be fun.
That's good. The word fascinating comes up all the time in conversations about cannabis with people that are being enlightened and understanding about this product more and more. And there's more research and more studies being done. And Stephen, I know you and I have had this discussion as well, that you'd think by now the educational process at our elected officials would actually be a little bit more further ahead. It's almost like they are treating it like a necessary evil weed that I have to learn about now. You've been in DC, Mark, you've been down there as well. Is that an accurate assessment of how they're approaching this?
I do believe so, Jimmy. We would hear a lot that we need research, and that's repeated over and over. And it's like, okay, well, what's stopping us from getting past saying we need it, And that just, nothing ever gets done with it. It's very frustrating in that aspect of, all the years that it's been listed as this harmful thing, when all the research was done to find negative effects, nothing to find out any benefits. So, we're kind of stuck there and needing that first shoe to drop and having, some information out there. And colleague of mine, Dr. Sue Sicily, had gotten a contract with the DEA and the FDA, and then they couldn't use the product because it was so contaminated and so poor. So it's like, not only do you have to get research on it, but now you're going to find out and go back and make sure that they're growing it right, so you can actually get, usable research and data out from it.
Now, we all know that there's only one place in America where it's federally allowed to be grown. Did anybody see the Today Show series? They've been doing a lot of stories. Stephen, did you see where they keep the old weed at the University of Mississippi?
What was it, like in the basement?
In a freezer at 40 degrees below zero for 7 years.
And they show it, and it's terrible looking. You can't recognize it as cannabis at all.
I felt so bad for the guy that's been in that place for 40 years dealing with this, right? I mean, you could tell it was awkward for him. He goes, look, I know it's shit. There's nothing I can do about it. It's a damn federal government, but we laugh about this. We've got an open forum here in a talk show. I've lived to see the day where we're talking about this plant as a medicine and as a tax vehicle in 2021. I'm still amazed that we can do this now. So, and David, you talk about this. It's 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps back, 5 steps forward. It's all over the place. When you see a major media outlet like NBC News doing what I thought were pretty balanced stories on the cannabis industry, this also helps the cause, doesn't it? Mark, I'm asking you.
Oh, yeah, sure it does. I've been a long believer in the more it gets, a controversial issue gets talked about, the more people relax about it. They know it's not it's something that everybody can get into the discussion. And your earlier comment about needing education is probably not as true with Stephen and your political world and this world of Massachusetts, but you'd be amazed at how little is known about cannabis regulation, taxation, the need for social equity programs and that sort of thing in the states that don't have any legal products. So right. There's a lot of education that needs to be done. That's interesting too, because you're right. We live in a legal bubble in New England here. Okay. And it's become, David Rabinovitz, you tell me, on the outside looking in, is the stigma coming down even here in Massachusetts? Are you seeing evidence of that?
I think at this point, the sky has not fallen in, right? I think Steve would probably agree with that. And you're seeing more of that I just read an article today where it was one of the Western Massachusetts towns where they talked about all the fear that they had, nothing came to the realization. The kids are not becoming hooked, they're now becoming heroin addicts because marijuana is legalized, where people aren't turning into zombies. It's just, it's like at this point, it's ho-hum. Stores open up and nobody really takes a lot of notice of it.
Right. I was at the opening of Ready, a new dispensary in Newton, my hometown, just outside of Boston, on last Friday. Of course, I was off the internet for the first time in 6 months at that time. And what happens? I walk into a new dispensary. They're live streaming from the dispensary. So, of course, I jumped on that show. That being said, there was no one there. They had a policeman outside to handle the crowd. There wasn't a crowd. So it's all of a sudden, it's just another new business opening. Stephen, you've seen all sorts of examples of the fervor over a new dispensary. And in fact, just so you know, Stephen, I asked the New Hampshire representatives in the last show who the first person was to buy adult use legal cannabis in Massachusetts at Cultivate. They didn't know. The answer was Stephen Mandile. They do now.
Excellent. Yeah. It's strange to become the answer to a trivia question.
That's
based
right.
on that, but hey, I'll wear that proudly. I mean, we were there together, and that was a lot of what the worries was like that amount of traffic, into every town opening up, and it was really those first few weeks with nowhere else to go. You could either go to Leicester or you go to Northampton, and that was it.
And Tom or Mark, tell me what parts of the country. Tom, where are you calling in from?
I'm out in the heat here in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Oh,
yeah. Well, I'm in the heat here in Alexandria, Virginia.
Where are you, Mark?
Alexandria, Virginia, just outside Washington, but it's
I know Alexandria. I've been to it actually. What do you think of that? My brother lives in Chevy Chase, Maryland, and has been in the DC area since the 70s. So I'm very familiar with that area. And I know, Stephen, you visit the nation's capital on a somewhat regular basis as well. What I'd love to hear your guys' opinions. Is this, if you were talking to a total stranger about this bill and they say, what's the biggest change in this will be X. Mark, what's the biggest change that will come out of this bill, hopefully?
Well, I think descheduling the product, getting it off the controlled substances list will open the door to a lot of things. The way it's treated by the federal government versus the states, and the way it's treated by by the banks and Veterans Administration. I mean, it's gonna change a lot of things all by itself.
Stephen, what are you working on in Massachusetts right now? I know that you also are very active in the state politics and policy making. What's happening in Massachusetts? I believe there were something like 6 bills the last time that we talked that were under consideration. What's going on in the State House?
Yeah, I mean, I think the total now that's been assigned to that committee is close to 60 bills. I have 2 bills, but both companion bills. They have one in the House, one in the Senate. One is to increase, it's H179 and S70, which both aim to increase access and a new pathway for veterans to become registered patients in Massachusetts, similar to ways they're already doing in a couple other states. Adding opioid use disorder to the list of qualifying conditions, as well as PTSD, to help break stigma. And then also a separate bill, which is to protect Second Amendment rights for medical patients in Massachusetts. We did a year-long research study for veterans in cannabis and their medical cannabis and health. And the top barriers reported were, money for a card, money for a product, the right product, and also owning a firearm. And again, these are tasks, other states have already passed legislation to protect those Second Amendment rights. So we went in again, we're not trying to, redesign the wheel here. We're just kind of bringing everyone up to speed. And anything I can do for a veteran that's remove barriers, create more access, bring education, I'm committed to doing that. I made that commitment, 6 years ago when I came off of everything.
Well, we have a lot of respect for you, Stephen Mandile, and the passion and the work you put in with a joint venture and that show. And we look forward to continuing with that. Tom, I just want to ask you and Mark one more question, because we are up against the half hour. Obviously, Senator Cory Booker is passionate and adamant that this is a social justice bill. And one of the things I'm really concerned about when it comes to future reform is not just to expunge the records of those who have been incarcerated for possession crimes and nonviolent crimes, but coming up with a program that actually gives those people an opportunity, workforce development. NACB, I'm guessing, has got to come up with I'm sure they have a policy about this. How important is it to create ways to get these people back into paying jobs and active members of society?
Yeah, and I mean, it's critically important, not only to Senator Booker, but to the NACB. We created our own social equity guidelines that we presented to different municipalities, cities, and states, and continue to do so. We just did that last week. Arizona just came out with the social equity guidelines in May with public comment period, and we're advising them along with other states. So it is important to the NACB. I will say this, and just so you understand, some of the components of Schumer and Booker's bill, they are stressing things like community reinvestment grant program and equitable licensing grant program that would be run. And then there was also, by the way, just a little poke to the Biden administration. I don't know if you noticed that, but saying, hey, by the way, we're going to prevent the revocation of security clearances for federal employees. So there's that whole dust up earlier this year where the White House revoked some of those. But the other side of that, right, of this, of Senator Booker's pretty ardent stance on this is the bill we need to pass, there's some fallout from that, because what the stance is, it's gotten politicized now, is go for this bill and ignore the Safe Banking Act, because as Senator Booker said, that's just to support the rich, corporations. And that's not to go for social equity, which personally I think is a mistake, and it's a mischaracterization of what the Safe Banking Act is. But but hey, I mean, Mark, it's Washington and everything gets politicized, but it's a shame that, it's become the zero-sum game of take this bill, not the other one, because, and it is, listen, this is the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act is a much more ambitious bill. It deschedules it, like Mark said. That's probably the most important component of this. But in my mind, take what you can get. You can probably pass the Safe Banking Act, in short order. Take that now. Don't make it one or the other, and don't push this where this is something like this, where it's this massive, is going to take a while. Right. And if you're sacrificing that, and Mark sent me an article on this, there's pushback on it from Ed Perlmutter, of course. But I think it's the wrong move. As much as the NACB supports social justice and all the social justice components in here, don't politicize it. Take what you can get. Well, I think the climate is one of the biggest challenges. I think this bill is exciting to talk about. I certainly encourage talk and communication about every element of our society. So we will certainly be talking about that as we continue. I want to thank Tom Nalasco and Mark Gorman from the NACB. I actually look forward to talking with both of you guys on the phone, as opposed to texting or in a Zoom room. And I look forward to that in the future. Thank you. And Stephen, can't wait to see you again at conventions, face-to-face conventions, right? And parties, they're coming back. We're coming back, and we've got a dream team of marketing champions. We're going to talk about the use of billboards in advertising for cannabis for obvious reasons. And we'll be back with more of the Green Rush Live after this.
So I think there's one very important difference between me and most of my team members and other cannabis accounting firms, especially outsourced cannabis accounting firms. With a lot of the other firms, you're going to find bookkeepers or folks that were accountants for their entire career, but they were junior accountants. I've spent most of my career alongside CFOs at public companies with thousands of employees, public companies. So much of my career wasn't spent in the debits and credits. It was spent with the CFO, CEO, COO of large public companies, working on strategy, working on planning and big initiatives, working on projects such as mergers and integrations. So that high level experience, along with being able to do the debits and credits and having members of my team that also have fairly senior experience and also members of the team that are junior and can do the bookkeeping at a little bit lower cost than some of the people with the experience, gives our clients a much broader depth of experience than a lot of the other firms where you're hiring someone that is just a bookkeeper and can't help with the strategy side of it, or someone that's been an executive for a long time and can only help with the strategy but can't help with the hands-on.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And when I started Pro
banking bill deals with a small part of this, but not what needs to be done. We need a broad, comprehensive bill.
Can I just say something on that?
Go ahead.
I'm telling you right now, if somebody tries in the Senate to do just a banking bill, they're going to make all the wealth and the money that is going after this already is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But what could become a even bigger industry, to just do it so some people can get rich and not do something about the people who are languishing with criminal convictions, not do something on restorative justice, not do something to make sure that the business opportunities are created are fairly given a fair playing field, where right now in many states, someone who has a criminal conviction for selling marijuana can't get a license now I don't know about other members of the Senate, but I will lay myself down to do everything I can to stop an easy banking bill that's going to allow all these corporations to make a lot more money off of this, as opposed to focusing on the restorative justice aspects.